Hello, in this video, let's see how we created this epic short film with a lot of visual effects using image generation and video generation AI models. The platform that we used for all these different AI models is 11 Labs, all right? So they have this flows interface where you can create these nodes and wire them up, okay? And a node could be anything from like an image to like image generation model or a video generation model, okay? So in order to build this, so this essentially it's like the node graph that we have here, which we have used to build this short film. Now, even before we get to the production side of things, let's start with the pre-production. So the pre-production of this short film happened entirely inside of Claude Code, okay? Now, the idea was to have some sort of a South Indian king fight against a massive bad guy army. Like, I would even show you the army that I generated for the bad guy. So it's like, it's supposed to be this huge army with just some 300 soldiers. It's basically a mashup of where I wanted to have like the Gideon story where he defeated this huge army with just 300 men, but happening in the era of Raja Raja Chola. Okay, so that was basically my idea. And so I gave it to Claude and I asked it to basically create this script for me. And I had a couple of iterations with it. Essentially, I didn't want to have any religious elements in this. I just wanted the story to be about faith overcoming fear. Okay, so, and based on that iteration, so it gave me this nice story. I'll show you the, the complete script. So this is essentially the script that we have. I also specifically asked it to break down the script into 4 parts because, Seedance, which is the video generation model that we are using for the short film, right? It can generate only a maximum of 15 seconds. It can generate multiple shots in that 15 seconds, but it can, at one go can generate only 15 seconds of video, at least with Seedance 2.0. Okay. So with that in mind, I wanted to have this short film that is about 60 seconds long. So the idea is to have these 4 nodes. So you see, so this is the first Seedance node, which generates the first 15 seconds of the movie. And then you have the second 15 seconds generated by the second node. And you have like, the third and the fourth generations. So I just instructed Claude to also structure the script so that I could, generate the videos using Seedance. Okay. So once I had the script, I just went through it and then I asked Claude itself to give me a list of all the characters that would be needed for this short film. The thing with AI generated movies is the challenge is consistency, because even here you see like at any given time it can generate only 15 seconds of video, right? So the other node that we use, the second node or the third node, has no idea what happened before, right? So it just works with the prompt that you give, right? But the cool thing is the Seedance AI model, for example, takes in a lot of references. Okay, so you can plug in a lot of reference images and that helps you to steer the video generation. Okay, so basically for each of the key characters that show up in each of these videos, I made sure to have a character sheet or like a key reference image. Okay, so that's basically what I asked Claude to do. Next, after I finalized the script, I asked it to give me a list of the key characters and also the prompts that I would need to generate those key characters. Okay, so I just iterated the ideas here in the text realm, and then once I had some clarity with the prompt, then I brought it into like 11 Labs and I started generating the images. So I'll show you first the characters that we generated for this short film. So it starts with like, the king character first. So in this short film, I play the king character. So for that, first of all, I needed a character sheet of myself. For that, I basically gave these images as input. It's just me sitting in my like, in front of my computer, and I took these different angles of myself and I fed all these different angles into GPT Image 2. Okay, so previously for another video I used Google's Nano Banana, but I seem to get better result with GPT Image 2. Okay, especially for character sheets. So you see, it actually has got all my face exactly as it is in the reference image, and it even generated this like standing version of me. So I use this as my like main default character sheet of myself, and I uploaded this image into Claude, okay, and I said, okay, this is the main character who's the king in this movie, so give me a prompt that I could use to transform this character sheet into a king character sheet for this movie. Okay, so that was basically the prompt that I gave, and with the prompt that I got, I basically fed this as the input to another GPT Image 2 node, and here I just like pasted in the prompt, and you see that it actually did a really good job in creating the king character based on my default character sheet. Like it kind of basically the same features and everything it kept. It had a it did change the hairstyle and added a crown and all, but you get the idea, right? So it basically generated this king character sheet for me. And now, since I have the king character sheet, I can then, go and do a bit of look dev. So there are all these different locations and lighting environments in the movie. So for that, again, with the help of Claude, I generated a couple of images, the key shots. For example, this is the first shot in the beginning of the movie where the king is a bit afraid, looking at the massive army that is against him, right? And then this is the shot where, he gets a bit of faith, and, he has that fire is ignited, so he has this faith there, and he just tries to inspire other people, right? So this is that second look dev lighting, and this basically is the look dev for the battle scene. And then you also have the scene where he's victorious, and and here we have faith conquering fear, and they just win the huge army, right? So so basically this is that look. So the thing is, you can keep iterating on this, okay? So you can until you're satisfied with the look of the character in each of these different settings, you can just keep iterating and keep generating more and more images. So this is the work that was done for the main lead character, the king character, okay? And after that, we have the bad guy, the warlord, right? Like the enemy king. So for that, I just went ahead with this look, and here again, I generated a couple of looks based on the environment that this character is supposed to be in. So this is for the scene where he's fighting, and then we also have the scene in the beginning where he's representing fear, right? So and then we also have a unhelmeted version of him, so where you see actually the face of the fear. And so here again, this is the last scene where he gets defeated. So the look of how he's going to be when the fear is defeated by faith. So that's this. And then in this movie, you also have these supporting characters, right? So for example, here, this is the character which embodies the team's spirit, right? So in the beginning, he's a bit shaky and afraid. So that's this persona. And then once the king inspires him and ignites the fire of faith in him, so he becomes confident that he could overtake the army, right? So that's basically the spirit of the small team of soldiers that he has, right? This represented by this character. So that's this. And then I also generated this commander character. So we have the character sheet, and also during the fight, how it's going to look. We generated that as well. And here we have the army, all the different people in the king's team, right? So we also have them, all the different types of people that are going to be part of his team, so that we can generate the crowd based on the characterization of these people, right? So that's this. So you even see based on these different types of characters in the king's soldier team, so we even generated this crowd of people standing with the king. And we also have the scene where they go and before they light the torch. So this is that scene. So we also have a silhouette of that. So and then we also have the bad guy army, right? So this is the soldiers. They all look kind of same, right? So I didn't even have to generate so many iterations of them. They basically look the same. But the idea is that this is the army, the huge army. They also all are wearing this helmet and armor and everything, and they look scary. And this is the scene where they are getting defeated by the king's faith. So that's this. And then also the props, the different props that are supposed to be used in the movie, we generated that as well. So all of this, like, the pre-production work, right, like happened over here, right? Like we decided on the different key characters and the different settings that they would be in, and also the props and even the environment. Like for example, in this movie, we go through these 4 different environments. So this is where we start there. This is where they're standing and like looking at the huge bad guy army coming after them, and then like this is the scene where their village is destroyed by the bad guys, and then this is the scene where they go in this stealth mode towards the bad guy camp. And then you also have the final summit scene where they are victorious and faith has overcome fear, right? So the 4 different locations are also generated. So by means of spending time to generate these location and character sheets, these reference images. So that's basically what helps us to have some consistency in our generation, right? Like that's what helps us to create a movie rather than just this 10-second or 15-second generation of a video. It's just standalone. But I just wanted to see if I can convey a story, tell a story using these AI video generation models. So that's essentially this exercise. And it worked out quite well actually, so for example, so this is the first generation, right? So for each of the generation, we see the prompts also, Claude can give that as well for us, right? So here you see, for the first node, we have the prompt, and it also specifies for each of these seconds. First 3 seconds, this is what's supposed to happen. Then 3 to 7 seconds, this is what happens. So it's timed, and this gives a lot of input to Seedance to generate the appropriate frames. So I also asked Claude to let me know what are the image references that I need to give to each of these nodes. So we are totally using 4 nodes, right, for this entire movie, because each node can generate 15 seconds. So Claude, took care of planning everything. He just asked me to generate all those characters. So I did, and it also assisted me in letting me know what are the images that I need to connect to those respective nodes. So based on that, I basically use this node graph that 11 Labs provides, and did all the connections, right? So here you see the blue wires. So these are the images that are connected to the first shot, right? Like you have the king reference, then the king's first look dev image, and then you have the young soldier, the bad guy army, and all those things. So basically you have all the images that are needed for this first video generation over here, connected over here. And another thing that we do is so before we give the actual prompt, so we have these 3 things that we give for all the 4 nodes. Okay, so this is the style block. So here we have the prompt for the style that we are going for, and then this negative prompt of what should not be there in the videos. And then we also have the king's look, because the king carries the entire story, right? So we have the specific prompt for the king as well. So these 3 prompts, right, we add irrespective of what node it is, be it node 1 or node 4. So we add this in the beginning. So if you see, if you see here, so we start with the style, prompt, and then we have the negative prompt, and then we also have the king's style prompt. And after that only, we actually go and start talking about what needs to be actually generated by this first node. And at the end, we also specify the audio that we would like to get. Seedance is really good at generating audio by itself. If you want to direct the audio that gets generated, you can do that as well by means of adding that as part of your prompt. So that's basically the exercise for each of the nodes. Okay. Another thing that we could do is, so after I generated this first video, I brought it into DaVinci Resolve, which is my editorial application. And here I went to the last frame of the first generation. So this is the first generation till here, right? So this 15 seconds. And I just rendered out just that last frame alone. Okay. And I brought it into 11 Labs, and over here, see, you have the last frame of this first generation, and I gave that as input to this second generation, so that there is a bit of continuity, and the second node knows what it needs to generate after, right? So that's basically the idea. And I did this pretty much for all the other nodes as well. So after we generate this video, the second 15 seconds, again, here you see a lot of these image inputs have been given. I even gave the first video as an input to this node, so that it has context on what happened before, so that it can continue things in a bit more sensical manner. So I just went to the second, generation's last frame and gave that also as an input to this, the third generation that we are doing. And, and then we did the same for the last sequence. So essentially that was the exercise that we went about to create this short film, okay? And after I created this short film, like I noticed that one particular shot, right, like over here, let me hide this. If you see, this is the original generation, okay? And you see that, in the sequence, there is this king who is already like in stealth mode, as like, penetrated or gone closer to the enemy's camp, and he is giving the signal to, light the fire, okay? Now, so the king is giving the signal to light the fire, and in the next shot you see the king is also standing with the army and he's also lighting the fire. So that didn't quite make sense. So what I did was I just cut this shot alone, rendered it out and brought it into 11 labs and made use of Google's Omni Flash, which is very good at doing the spot corrections, okay? So I just gave the commander's image as input. So you see the commander image that we generated, right? So this guy, so the commander's images, right? So I just gave that as a reference. I also gave the king's image. Both the king's image and the commander's image are given to this Google Omni Flash, and I told it to replace the king character with the commander character. So it did do it, but it's just that at least some 3 characters look like the commander right now. So that's not quite what we wanted. So I added another Google Gemini Omni Flash model and said make sure that in the front row all the characters look different. So I basically gave this king's soldier characters image as a reference to pick and choose whatever character it wants to assemble that front lines, and it did do a really good job at it. So you see that the front line has all these different characters. The commander is also in place. So I brought that back in, and we have a shot that actually kind of makes sense now. So you see, so the king gives the command, and it's actually different people. His soldiers are the one who's lighting the fire, and then they go and take over the enemy's camp. So that's basically the process that we went through to generate this epic short film. Hope this video was useful. Thanks for watching.